Hey Todd, hey Chelsea.
Hello.
Hey.
So yesterday we were in a meeting with a new VP at an old client, and she was struggling to understand kind of the tech stack she inherited, specifically that they are a contact only model in Salesforce. And it occurs to me this is actually like pretty nuanced and has a lot of implications that are important for demand gen and the business as a whole. And I was hoping that you two, as our senior Salesforce and Marketo architects, could walk us through those nuances. Um, I off the top, could we define like a Salesforce lead versus a Salesforce contact and how Salesforce treats them differently?
Sure. So leads are sort of unqualified opportunities. They're kind of an amalgamation of a person, an account, and an opportunity that isn't, ready for prime time necessarily yet. And then typically you'll follow some sort of qualification process, and then at a certain point in the cycle, you'll convert them to a contact account and opportunity. Sort of definitionally, though, they are not directly related to capital A accounts in Salesforce. So XYZ Corp, when a new person comes in from that company, you don't necessarily see that at the account level until you've converted them over to a contact.
And most people, I mean, marketing's generating leads, but it sounds like most reps actually do the work on the contact level, which is kind of weird.
I would say it depends on the org. One thing that's also just kind of confusing is that, when you're talking about capital L lead object in Salesforce, it's very similar to, the marketing lead term. So that in and of itself causes a lot of confusion where you're like, wait, what are we talking about here? I would say, yeah, most like account executives prefer to work from accounts and opportunities rather than leads themselves. If you have, like a SDR team or whatever, they're going to be more comfortable working with leads and doing that conversion and handoff. But for an AE, they're often like, wait, why do I have to go to two different places to find all my stuff? This is dumb. And then they are like, not giving leads the love that they require because they're not ready yet.
Yeah. And contacts are the only ones associated with leads, right? So they have a lot more data kind of available to them.
I mean, with accounts.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Sorry.
Yes. Yeah. So contacts and accounts are directly related. Out of the box, leads and accounts are not. They just kind of live off in their own little island to the side until you convert them and then bring them into the fold.
Now, both leads and contacts can be campaign members, which I'm sure we'll get to reporting on this, often causes confusion when that comes up. And then contacts are on opportunities. That's how that will relate to each other rather than leads.
Yeah. Yeah. How does it affect reporting, having both objects as campaign members?
I think the most common problem that people have with campaign reporting with both is you have to run two reports every time if you want to do a campaign member and lead and campaign member and contact. You can do just like campaign member reports, but that's not going to get you all the information that's on the lead and contact object.
And most, certainly DG directors are not thinking to run two reports every single time.
It's also super common where people will have like an MQL date on your lead and contact, and now your dashboard of how many MQLs do I have has two components on it, and you have to do the math to add the two of them together, which is like, what? Why?
Yeah. I've never, any place that I have been internal where we've had lead and contacts, I've always had to do the main reporting work in Excel because you have to bubble gum all that together by creating like the duplicate reports in Salesforce and all that. So it makes it hard for like marketing to log in and really get a full view of what's going on with their campaigns.
Yeah. I mean, I know at this account, I can't even log into Salesforce as a demand gen like consultant. So I imagine, yeah, there's a lot of novice users on the marketing side in there, not knowing how to interpret things. So it sounds like a lot of our clients, we are mostly B2B, but they switched to just a contact model. Why are some of the reasons they do that?
Well, kind of as we talked about, to simplify the reporting where you are really only looking at one object. I would say it's a really good fit if you have a well-defined like account structure and it's who your market is. You can pretty confidently determine this person belongs at this account. Some other motivations are if the org is really particular about their communications with customers, and we do not ever want an SDR to speak with a customer, then when somebody comes in, you have to know immediately, are they a customer or not, which, as we said before, leads are not associated with accounts. So how would you know that? So that's a common one as well. And just to simplify people's lives to like not have to go to multiple places to handle, their workload. That can just be a headache in and of itself to be like maintaining 2 list views or however people are doing their day to day.
Yeah.
If the org is really strong with account-based marketing too, especially if that follows through with the sales follow-up, if there's a rep who serves 3 companies, then you don't want a orphaned lead to come in and have the BDRs work it. And that just feels disjointed.
And what are some of the cons? Because from the conversations I've overheard, it sounds like there are also some nuances to living with just contacts and not having that lead object.
Yeah, the most common one is how do you know which account to pick to associate this new person to? Sometimes it'll be easy depending on what market you work in, but sometimes it's impossible. Like if you're in a space like restaurants, for example, where the structure is this big LLC that owns 12 different restaurants that are all different brands. It's like, how do you pick the right one? Or if you are working with gigantic organizations like, the Wells Fargos of the world, and you treat their different divisions as different accounts because they're separate buying units, can be really tough to figure out like, okay, which one does this person belong to? And so people generally will have to kind of decide what sort of pain they prefer of whether they pick an account and maybe it's the wrong one and a human being has to move them around, or they put them in kind of a holding bucket of we don't really know where this contact belongs, but it's here. Um, and so like whatever you use, whether it's a third party tool like a lean data that's doing lead to account matching, whether you create something custom, or if you have HubSpot where it can do some of that automated account matching and create contacts directly, sometimes it's going to be wrong and you just kind of have to live with that. Like when you have leads, it's a human being generally that's doing that conversion from lead to contact and account, and they're choosing with their big human brains, like, does it belong with this existing account or do I need to create a new one or what have you? And as much as we love automating everything, like it's not as good as a human. So there will be mistakes, and that's something that's just the reality of taking that approach.
And when somebody uses a personal email when automation is not sure, I often hear us talking about like a none account or no account. And it's very unnerving for people, at least end users, it seems, to see a huge volume of contacts have none account. Is that a training issue? Is it a naming issue? Like, how do we get people more comfortable with the idea that they're going to have to do a little, BDRs, for example, are going to have to do a little sleuthing and associate that contact properly.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes no matter what you do, you're never going to figure it out, because all I have is personal email and there's no more. Some people aren't on LinkedIn and you just can't find them or whatever. And so, again, if you are using one of those like none accounts or whatever, and you have a huge high volume, you can eventually get to the point where there's like 10,000 contacts under this account, and now you can't even open the account record because it crashes because there are too many contacts to load. And it just becomes completely unwieldy. It is It's sort of like picking up the problem of leads and moving it over to contacts, but now I don't really know how to put it, but yeah, that's going to happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cleaner reporting is
And
bringing more user confusion.
yeah, and you can do some things to make it better, but it's not perfect. You can look at your order of operations. When are you enriching records? Can you do that before account association? You can try, but you're always going to have a large amount that you're not able to associate, unfortunately.
Yeah. It kind of reminds me of when we talk about like merging dupes. Like at some point, it has to have a human be thoughtful, and you're only going to do as best as you can do. It's not 100% like solution available. So how do we match people to accounts? You talked about some automation and lean data and ring lead. Is there any process you guys like to follow or help clients like determine how they're going to do that?
I would say the most common one is using the email address domain, which again, if you have a well-defined market and you're not getting a ton of personal stuff, that can be sort of your first line of defense. But going back to my Wells Fargo example, that's not super helpful if you have Division A, Division B, Division C, and they're all at wellsfargo.com. That's probably the most common. Things like lean data and ring lead, they have some proprietary fuzzy matching that they do, which great, it's better, but again, it's still going to screw up sometimes. You can do some like lookups on the company name, but how do you know without having a massive fuzzy matching table? Because like IBM and international business machines are the same, but code doesn't necessarily know that. But yeah, I would say the email address domain is probably the most common, which is also, by the way, how HubSpot does it. You have a HubSpot company domain, and then it makes that association.
Interesting. So they're also struggling with Wells Fargo.
Yeah. Once you move stuff around, then it can be smarter. But yeah, if you have a bunch of them, it's going to be ambiguous.
And then auto converting versus manually converting. Do you have a preference? Is it always auto when you go from lead to contact?
So there's kind of hybrid approaches you can take. So you can do lead to account matching just by itself without actually converting the lead, and that solves the problem of not getting the full picture from the account view. You can see both associated contacts and associated leads, and then you can pull in account level information into your leads so that you can be like, no, BDR, stay away from this customer, even though it's not yet associated with that account directly as a contact. But it doesn't help you with the my reporting lives in two places. But that's a kind of first step that people sometimes take. And then you can choose to have a human come through and say, yep, that's right, let's go convert it. Or in some conditions, you may say, automate that and convert it right away as soon as we can find a match. Or you may say, even if we don't find a match, we're converting and either creating a new account or putting it in that none holding bucket.
What's
But
more likely, like creating a new account for everyone who's unmatched or the unknown?
it depends. This is again like, what's the kind of pain you prefer? Would you rather merge a bunch of potentially duplicate accounts that have been created because we got 5 people from new company X all at the same time, or having to reparent from the holding bucket to the new account? That will probably depend on the skill set and trainability of your team, how much potential work you have in around like deduping records. So yeah, it depends. It's like most things in our world.
Yeah. I imagine too, if you have round robin assignments, like that's not a great fit because those 5 people will go to 5 different reps. At first
That's
glance.
probably worth noting as well. You're going to lose out on some native Salesforce features if you do have a contact only model. They have things like lead queues, lead assignment rules that are built in for leads. And you have to do all that yourself with a contact only model. It's kind of what we've been talking about. I would say a contact only model is it's more custom. So you want to make sure you have people on your team that can understand it, that can grasp the conversion, converting things, that can grasp, oh, I'm going to have to customize lead assignment, all that.
And do companies revert? I've only heard of us going from leads and contacts to contact only. But I'm curious if you've seen people roll it back, like the pain is not worth it. And they're more willing to have a savvy report manager who can do everything twice versus do everything else.
I have seen that, but
I don't know that I've seen anybody completely blow it back up. I have heard of people doing that for some of the reasons we talked about, of the headaches of dealing with either duplicate accounts or a massive holding bucket. I don't think anybody really turns off lead to account matching once they've started doing it. But they may back off from, oh, we convert everything, to just a certain subset. And usually if you're kind of doing that, then the conversion from lead to contact happens very early on in the process. But there is definitely some like, ooh, that was rough. Didn't realize it was going to be like that, or things like that.
Yeah.
It's usually a big overhaul, I would say, not just with the back end of setting all this up, but with training reps and getting everyone using the reports on contacts. I feel like once an org makes this decision, they don't usually completely revert back because it would be too much of a change in the culture too.
Yeah. Interesting. And it sounds like training. Yeah. Like, there's no shortcuts for training. And that's just what part of this pain is, this headache.
Yeah.
Really interesting. Any final thoughts?
Not a decision to be taken lightly, I'll put it that way. So you should be pretty sure before you pull that trigger, that this is the way to go. I would say if you have a really complicated account structure or a market that's just all over the place, this probably isn't the way to go for you to do contact only. There are some nice things about, using leads as they're intended, but it may not be worth the frustrations of duplicated reporting and all that fun stuff.
Yeah. Cool. Well, thanks, you guys. Talk soon.